Welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. We are live in living color. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We have a whole slate of action we want to discuss here. We got some good news, some bad news, some just outrageously stupid things that happened in the NFL. And it all started on Thanksgiving. It ended on Monday after Thanksgiving. I hope your Thanksgiving was blurry, less confrontational, and hopefully you have plenty of leftovers for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arguably one of the greatest matchups I've ever seen on Thanksgiving Day come down to a terrible, and I think it's already been discussed on all national media, so I'm not going to disclose all the dumb things I've heard. But I will say this nicely. You as a head coach in the NFL know you have a timeout to use on a less than 2-minute drive going in to tie the game to go to overtime against arguably the number one team in the NFC, and you screw it up. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what happened with the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. By the way, highly entertaining game. Would not discount that game as game of the year when it comes to awesome matchups, but we also may have that same matchup of the year tonight, Thursday, when we have another great NFC matchup, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on. But one thing I really want to discuss, and there's a lot of action to discuss, is just where the teams are being at here and how we're going to line up here for going into the playoffs for the last basically month and a half. We got 6 or 7 weeks left of the season. 5 actually, if you include it's a week. I think it's a 17 or 18 week season now. So we're going down the stretch here for about another month. So really, truly, guys, a lot of great NFL action we got to recap. So let's get right into it. The Bears and Lions, I kind of talked about it in the opener here. That is pretty much what happened. Caleb Williams had a remarkable game, minus the last drive. David Montgomery for the Detroit Lions had a great game. I think Devin Moore had a pretty awesome game, 8 reception, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But all comes down to the last drive. The Detroit Lions let them walk into that game, and they shouldn't have. And it was probably the worst decision they could have done. Detroit played some pretty soft defense in the third and fourth quarter that kind of pretty much let them come back. And because it was about a 20 to nothing run at half. Or I'm sorry, it was 16 to nothing at half. Then it became 23. Yeah, it became 23 in the third quarter. And then the Bears picked up their points there in the late third, early fourth, and down the stretch. So kind of saw the parity there. Vegas had to make a run for the over. But that's pretty much what happened. And obviously Matt Eberflus was, he did some questions with the media and then was happily dismissed Friday morning after Thanksgiving for that decision and lack of awareness and lack of decision making. So he was dismissed as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Then we went to the 3:30 game or 4:30 game on the East Coast time with the $25 ticket of the week. It was the Cowboys and Giants, 2 backup quarterbacks, and the Cowboys win 27-20 against the Giants. Not surprising. Backup game, only cost $25 to go. Pretty straightforward. I don't know how else I could say it, but thank God I didn't watch that. I was too hungover. Seriously. And then the night game was arguably a mosh posh of this dumb shit. And it was the Packers and the Dolphins. And Packers kind of got themselves in a big lead early and didn't lose sight of it. And they play in Lambeau. And phenomenal game. Phenomenal game to watch. I mean, even though the game wasn't really ever in question about, Tua or the Dolphins coming back in that game, I think arguably good game by the Packers. The Friday game was surprising. So we had Amazon Prime, their first game of the year on Friday, the Chiefs and the Raiders. And I would say this game should not have been close, but it was. It reminded me of something called a trap game. For a lot of sports bettors and for a lot of fans, Games like this are the worst because these games, should easily be one-sided, and they are not. They are unreasonably close. The anxiety level's there. You're over, you're under, your prop bets are hot trash. So thank God anyone didn't bet on this. But it ended up being a botched last snap of the game. And, the Chiefs have earned themselves a playoff berth with this victory of 19-17 against the Raiders. So that gets us down into the Sunday slate of games, which arguably was uneventful. And there was a few games that were really awesome to watch, like the Steelers and the Bengals, which apparently didn't anyone in the Bengals or the Steelers organizations believe in defense at all. Or the Cardinals and the Vikings, which is awesome because that could potentially be a playoff matchup. Great matchup there as well. And I mean this respectfully. The Buccaneers and Panthers game was pretty awesome. And so was the Eagles and the Ravens. And so a few things. And then the Sunday night game was arguably, if you're a kid, it reminds you of a childhood back in New England where you played in the snow. And it wasn't just the snow. It was by the time it was all said and done, probably about 6 inches of snow on the ground. So it's pretty fun. It was a lot of running. But great game. And then the Monday night game was eventful too. So we have a lot to talk about on the Sunday night slate. The Steelers and Bengals, I talked about it just briefly just a second ago. Arguably, no defense was used by either team. Russell Wilson had 414 yards, 3 touchdowns. Najee Harris had 75 yards on the ground. Jamar Chase had 86 yards and a touchdown. No defense was spared. And it was a 44-38. They had, ladies and gentlemen, they had over 27 points by the Steelers, 21 points at the half. It was a 27-21 score at the half. So we knew we were gonna cover the over. So that was just phenomenal. Cardinals and Vikings, 23-22. Vikings just squeak out a victory there. But good offensive rhythm by the Cardinals there. They're still a threat to mess with in the West. Don't get it twisted. They're going to be a beast to deal with in the West. And so is the 49ers once they get healthy. I mean, the 49ers are dealing with a terrible injury bug in that organization that I'm not sure if it's just a front office scenario where they're not picking talent that doesn't get injured all the time or what. But there was arguably just the worst. The first game as well, the Chargers and the Falcons kind of was never really in question. Chargers won 17-13. Just really boring game. Kirk Cousins throws 4 interceptions. The Boo Birds are going to start coming out there and try to call for him to make the Falcons to make a change. That's just how that goes. I mean, you have that in football. You have a bad week, kind of go with it, right? The Patriots and the Colts, that's the game that disappointed me of the week, honestly. Patriots really were doing a hell of a job trying to win this game, and then they weren't. Then they weren't. They gave up, and it sucked. Lost that game by a point, and Anthony Richardson has the ball with less than 2 minutes, and they score with less than 12 seconds remaining, and that's the game. It's a heartbreaker to lose. Heartbreaker to lose. Looks like the Patriots are competing for a top 5 draft pick this year, and hopefully, they'll get themselves. They'll right the ship here via free agency and the draft, and we'll continue to go that route and do well. The Seahawks and the Jets were kind of another boring game, but the Seahawks won that game with Geno Smith's return to New York. Definitely a late pick 6 by Aaron Rodgers there, and just awesome defense by the Seahawks. Titans and Commanders, which, I mean, arguably right now, the story of the NFL this week is that the Washington Commanders ownership group is meeting with Congress, and I believe the members of the tribe of the Washington Redskins, or I'm sorry, the Sioux. I could be mistaken on this on the tribe, but they might potentially be bringing back the old Washington D.C. team name, as it's been reported heavily across the not just sports media world, but in Congress. There's been congressional hearings in regards to how the team name and trying to restore that name as it's not a disrespectful thing, and it's a celebrated name, and the logo is highly renowned, or just respected as well. So I'm interested to see how that narrative and that story plays itself out. Which, I mean, that's, you know we all call the Washington team the commies now, so that's what we're gonna do. 42-19 against the Titans. Overall, Jaden Daniels had 4 touchdowns. So obviously there was no like, hey, we pulling me out of the game. Texans and Jaguars. Texans won 23-20. That game should probably not have been as competitive on the scoreboard as it was, but looks like there was some late, I call it late garbage time scenarios there. Rams and Saints. That probably arguably was fun to watch up until it wasn't, for Taysom Hill getting injured. Alvin Kamara had 112 yards on the ground. Puka Nacua, less than 100 yards receiving with a touchdown. Derek Carr, only 184 yards throwing and 1 touchdown. Low scoring matchup entirely, 21-14. Not my cup of tea when it comes to boring football games on Thanksgiving weekend. There's about 4 or 5 of these games that, why were they on national television? Let's just go with that. But the Buccaneers and Panthers went to overtime, which was awesome. Hell, the game lasted for too damn long in overtime. The game should never have been in overtime anyway. Buccaneers are 6-6 and leading the division, from what I understand. Unless Falcons, the Falcons are now tied. So now it's like a 2-way tie for first in the NFC South. Just downright terrible game. Thank God that, Eagles and Ravens was definitely arguably the game of the week to watch in the 4:00 window. And I mean this remotely and seriously, that game that's a rivalry right there. The Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens, that's a hell of a game there. Not because they're birds, but because where they are generally located, geography location. And so definitely. The 49ers and Bills game, like I talked about at the beginning of the podcast episode, definitely it wasn't a snow globe game. It was a snow game. And probably one of the better ones in the last few years. Josh Allen ran for days. I think both teams ran for days until Christian McCaffrey has apparently a torn PCL, and he's going to be out a little while. And the play that had happened, kind of weird. Looks like a non-contact thing. I mean, it was really weird. And just Bills Mafia, man. They did their part. They shoveled out the snow. You would think by now that they would figure out a really easy way to do all this every time, and they do. It's called have people come in, get paid $20 an hour to shovel snow. Right? You're getting paid. So if you're want a job and you want to get paid $20 an hour, all it takes is you go in there and do it. It's a good little paycheck there. That's for sure. People looking for, because obviously there's a way in the system that they have to remove the snow, and I think it's conveyor belts and everything. I mean, there's a lot of feet of snow there. The new stadium is being built right next door. There's a covering. There's a awning that's being built above the fans, so it's going to protect a good chunk of them. But still, it's crazy. but definitely a game in memorial, definitely an enjoyable game to watch on Sunday Night Football. And the Broncos and Browns on Monday game, I can tell you from personal experience, I was about to win a 6-pick prop bet parlay that down to the last drive, if the Browns just kept a fucking field goal, I would have won two things. I would have won my square because I had 9, and I would have won my my pick parlay. And I lost both because of a pick 6 by famous Jameis Winston. So not enjoyable by any means to watch that happen on the last drive, and then the work day and the following day was not fun at an early start there. But just be careful, guys, going into the holiday season with these schedules and your matchups on your fantasy football, even your same game fantasy, your prop bets with Prize Picks and DraftKings and shit like that. Be careful because your matchups we're gonna get to the garbage time part of the season here soon, where you might think on a normal basis David Montgomery might get himself 100 yards rushing, but guess what? They had the playoffs locked up, so they might rest him. So be aware of that. Be smart about it. Um, about it. Maybe take a week off or so. If you have to, but enjoy it, right? So week 14 matchups, I really kind of want to get into for a fantasy standpoint, as a standpoint. Definitely Thursday Night Football with the Packers and Lions. That's going to be remarkable Thursday Night Football. And I cannot tell you enough. Now, there is some rivalry games on the 12 o'clock window or the 1 o'clock window for the East Coasters. Jaguars, Titans, Jets, Dolphins, Browns, Steelers, Seahawks, Cardinals was at 3 or 4 o'clock. Chargers and Chiefs are the 7 o'clock window or 8 o'clock window, excuse me. So you have some miscellaneous NFC, AFC matchups that really don't mean much. Bills and Rams, they're playing that in California. Bears and 49ers, that might be an eventful matchup. Eagles and Panthers, that might be okay. But yeah, you're going to have some good rivalry. I think the game of the week for the 12 o'clock window is arguably the Steelers and the Browns. Browns are going to want to make an impact. Seriously, coming off a loss on Monday night. But you might get trapped there because, Steelers might be not putting they might not put a offensive onslaught on the field. So don't fall yourself short of the prop bets. Be smart about the same game fantasy. Saints and Giants look terrible. Maybe you get some Alvin Kamara junk with maybe some catch and receptions and total yards. Might be your play. Justin Jefferson might have a good time there. Jalen Waddle against the Jets. I don't know. To me, that seems more like a running game for them. But two teams are very trashy, 3-9 and 5-7. But Thursday night is definitely the game for a lot of reasons. And then you have Monday Night Football, which is the Bengals and the Cowboys. Not excited about that. They're playing that in Jerry World Monday Night Football. Teams on the bye are Broncos, Colts, Patriots, Commies, Ravens, and Texans. So that's probably the last sequence of events on the bye week, I think. Late buys in the season. Trying to see if anyone's on week 15. So, yeah, that's the last week of the bye weeks, I think. And then we go pretty much into the home stretch of the season. And, I'll say it. You have rivalry weeks pretty much on week 15, 16, 17. AFC matchups that are dynamo, including on Christmas Day, which is the Chiefs and Steelers, Ravens and Texans on Christmas Day. Thursday Night Football on the day after Christmas is Seahawks and Bears. Why couldn't you have flexed one of those stupid-ass games on fucking Wednesday onto Thursday? Stupid scheduling. But Just it's gonna be a fun rest of the season, guys. And I think arguably be smart, be tactical, be aware of your prop bets, and have fun. This is the fun part of the season where we actually enjoy ourselves as fans. Because really, your team might be out of it for the whole year. Who knows? Like my team, the Patriots, we're just competing for a draft pick. But guess what we're doing? We're watching other football because it's football. So take that in mind, everybody. Hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Appreciate it. Have a good one.